Hello, my name is Priya Parrota, and I'm very glad to be with you today. I'm sending in this presentation as a recording because at the time of this conference, I'm going to be in the middle of a 2-month-long immersion program in Italian. And I'm only taking a break from that full immersion for this panel and have a little bit of a concern about my ability to give a presentation like this after having spoken no other language but Italian for a month or so. So I'm sending this in as a recording and will be to join you live for the Q&A. I'm very glad to be a part of this panel on climate and music education. What I'd like to do today is just share some thoughts about the role of music in climate education, why music is such an important resource for educators in a time of climate change. These reflections come from my experiences as an environmental songwriter and also from my experiences of bringing environmental music into classrooms to foster an understanding of our planetary crisis and what we can do to work for a better world. Oftentimes, environmental education is very science-based. And this is incredibly important. It's extremely important for kids to understand the science behind climate change, understand what it means, understand kind of what the predictions for the future are, understand the causes in a biophysical sense of climate change. All of these are essential things. At the same time, the climate crisis is not only something that can be expressed scientifically, it is also the result of a long historical process which has involved many phenomena, from colonialism to globalization to cultural change. And I think a big part of environmental education is understanding that human history and understanding how societies have, at different points in time, affirmed their connections to the environment through cultural practices, through spiritual philosophies, and how, by the same token, humanity has also severed and disregarded those connections by making certain political and economic choices. So I think all of this taken together is what constitutes a comprehensive and deep environmental education. Music is an incredibly important resource when we are talking about bringing that social, historical, cultural component into climate education programs. And there are a number of reasons for this. The first is that that climate change is something that, we cannot speak about purely in a clinical way. It is an issue that really provokes deep feelings, from anger and fear to sadness. And equally, the connections that we have with the environment are also replete with deep feeling, awe, kinship, wonder. And those feelings are not often given center stage within environmental education. But of course, all of us at this panel who are involved in music know that deep feeling is what music is about, and music can really help to center and convey different emotions in a very moving and very powerful way. And this is part of what makes music a great resource in an environmental education context. It gives students the opportunity to really dive into the emotional aspects, both positive and negative, of being in relationship with the environment and with a changing planet. Another reason why music is an important resource in environmental education is that it fosters cultural awareness, particularly if you are bringing into the classroom music of different, coming from different traditions around the world. Incorporating this music into environmental programming provides an opportunity to consider how cultures around the world have stewarded practices of sustainability, because a lot of that, the environmental sensibilities that go into those practices of sustainability are very powerfully conveyed in many of the world's musical traditions. So it helps us to understand the potential within the world's cultures to affirm and restore healthy relations on this planet. Equally, music can be a force for multicultural environmental dialogue, especially if you're bringing music of different styles into a classroom, whether as part of a fusion piece, which is something that I tend to work with a lot in my songwriting, or side by side as separate songs. Music provides sort of the shared context that's necessary in order to discuss environmental issues and traverse cultural boundaries in the process, because music can help us connect to the common core that might be present in music of different geographical regions and different traditions, being in many ways a universal language, obviously not in all ways, but in many ways. I've found that it makes kind of conversations across boundaries a lot easier and more fluid and more dynamic and frankly more interesting. Music can also be a source of historical education. A lot of the songs that I write kind of allude to historical processes and historical injustices that have led to the current climate crisis. And that is sort of a pedagogical horizon that, once again, is not always explored within environmental education, because human history doesn't always come into that process of climate education. So music can be a gateway into discussing history, which I think is an indispensable part of understanding contemporary environmental realities. Music can also help facilitate certain kind of states of mind and certain kind of spaces within which students can discuss and explore environmental issues. And this is because there's such a huge potential variety of music, so that's available to us as environmental educators. So certain types of music, maybe from contemplative traditions, can create a kind of like meditative space within a classroom. That type of music can also provide space for thoughtful reflection about the environment. Other forms of music perhaps can more easily facilitate emotional healing. And then there are types of music that simply make the process of education more fun. And that, too, is an indispensable component of environmental education because the climate crisis is such a grim situation. Many people associate environmental education also with this kind of serious, laborious, difficult. They see it as a very serious, laborious, and very difficult process. But music, and celebrating the music of the world that affirms environmental connections and celebrates our relationship to the environment, can really make a big difference within a classroom. And so all of these characteristics of music lend themselves very well to environmental education, and that's something that I've found to be true over the course of the past few years. First doing bringing music from different parts of the world into classrooms in Puerto Rico, the island where I grew up and worked, in the aftermath of natural disaster, fostering solidarity across islands by bringing different musical cultures from different islands into the classroom, and then more recently through songwriting and through this musical practice which I'm calling climate soul, which for me is the process of kind of bringing spirit and heart and emotion and hope into how we see the climate crisis. And that's a lot of what my original music in the last few years has focused upon. And so I'm really glad to be a part of this panel and to discuss these intersections of music and the environment with you, in the hopes that over time, this immensely moving and beautiful and powerful medium can increasingly have a place within how we understand the climate crisis, how we envision possibilities for the future, how we critique the past, and how we bring all of that into classrooms so that young people can learn about environmental issues in a dynamic, diverse, and ultimately empowering way. Thank you very much.